if I didn't allow myself to go broke, I would have never gotten this job. Even if I got rich and famous, like there would still be a point where I would lose everything, all my reputation, all my money, just to get to this point of absolute zero, of going broke, of getting to the bottom. Because when you're at the bottom, that's when you truly surrender to God. Like until you drop all ego, you will never actually choose God. And you realize when you do choose God, how supported you are. So I've got some updates, some really good updates. I know it's only been like 2 days since the last video, but a lot's happened in 2 days. So that job I was telling you about, where I went for an interview, the full-time marketing job, turns out the boss is really cool. Like she is really progressive and woke and has a lot of integrity. And I think she does things in a way that's actually the way I would do it. You know, like oftentimes I've been with leaders before that I felt like were corrupt or incompetent, and I felt like they weren't worthy of my service. I was like putting myself in a very unpalatable environment for me, serving someone that don't deserve my service. And I always felt really gross. But then I'm like, well, I have nowhere else to serve, or I don't know what else to do, so, you know, and then I would stay there and then it would just be bad for everyone. But this boss, at least from our interview, I get the sense that she really does things from the heart. Not just about trying to do things just to make money and get a result, but really coming from a place of, does this feel real? Does this feel true? I really like that. I'm really appreciative of that. So I decided to take the job. And I told her, hey, look, you know, I don't think I'm gonna be like a marketing guy for the rest of my life. I'm just going through a period of my life right now where I feel like I want to do some like real work or some like traditional normal job, right? And I might not even stay in New Zealand for very long, but while I am here and while I am going through this phase of my life, I would very much like to help you. Because I like you and I like what you do and I like how you run your business and how you treat your people. And I think it would be really fun as well to try it out. Um, you know, and she was like, hey, that's totally cool. And I love this about her. Like, I should just said that, you know, like, she was like, you know, look, we can offer people like a 2-year contract or whatever, but it doesn't mean that you're gonna stay for 2 years. It doesn't mean you're like permanently imprisoned in the company. Like, if things do come up and you need to go, well, it's like, well, you still need to go. It doesn't really mean shit. So, you know, even if you try to impose some sort of permanency, like, just as nature, nothing really is permanent. Like, only our mind can conform and confine ourselves into these like structures where we try to control and have some sort of permanency, but really in reality, it's always changing. Nothing is permanent. And I don't necessarily think she's coming at it from this like philosophical perspective, and I don't think she realizes it, because I mentioned this a few times, but she's like, you know, I'm just doing what I feel is right or whatever. But she really is coming from the heart, from intuition, and from love. And that's why I love her actually so much. Well, at least from that interview, you know, hopefully she turns out to be what she said she was. So she was like, yeah, look, if you can't do all that, that's fine. Stay as long as you want to, as you need to. If you love it, you'll stay. If you won't, you'll leave. You know, even if you promise to stay for a year, but you hate the job, you'll still end up leaving in a month, so it doesn't really mean anything. You know, these these constraints we have. And I was like, look, I never worked a full-time job before either, you know, besides acting. And I was only really for like a month, so I don't know if I can really handle it. And she was like, hey, yeah, that's cool. Look, the business is fine. That's like, it's just that we have more clients wanting to work with us, and it would be cool to have more clients, but it's like, we only take as much clients as we can handle. So if you can only do like 2 weeks, 2 days a week, then that's okay too. And I'm like, holy fuck. Wow, that's... I love you. You're awesome. That's so cool. And I was like, no, you know, look, I don't think I need 2 days. I think I can do like 4 days. Because she was like, you know, we only work 7 hours a day anyway. So I'm like, what, 4 days, 28 hours a week? I think I can handle that at the very least. You know, that's like part-time, full-time, almost full-time, part-time. And yeah, she's like, you know, we can just go ahead as it feels. It's like, you know, if you do 28 or it's too much, we can do it like, you know, to 21, or, you know, if you want to do more, let's do like the whole 5 days a week sort of things. And the way she does this is exactly the way I would approach my employees as well. Like with this fluidity and this like intuitiveness about it. It's like rather than trying to force people to fit into your mold, which is only gonna have resentment and like a negative repercussion in the future, right? It's like, look, like what do you think is gonna happen if you force someone to do something they don't want, and in all of these ways, right? It's like these mental obligations. If you're forcing someone into a mold, like of course over time they're just gonna rebel. It's like when you repress energy, it doesn't mean the energy is just gone. It's still there, and it just builds up and up and up until it explodes and it ruins the whole company down the line, right? So it's like, well, rather than doing this traditional like dogmatic way of like a 40-hour work week, it's like, why don't you just like it's not about working 40 hours a week. It's about you're just trying to do meaningful work, and you need people that help you do the work sometimes, right? So then you hire the people that are fit for the role, and you try and create an environment that best allows them to serve their purpose. If you force an environment onto them that doesn't help them, but you think it's going to help you, it doesn't actually. It doesn't. It only does it in the short term, but in the long term, it fucks up things for everybody. And that's life as well, not just in a company structure. Like you have to get people to work from truth in their heart, you know? Whew, sorry, sometimes I rampage and like I really get grounded into my mind, and I really would want to work more from my heart. She chooses people that align with her, so I have a good feeling that everyone she hires is on a similar wavelength, that is operating from this like almost this like exclusive island cocoon bubble of love that is quite different to how other companies actually operate. And I can attest to that because most companies I work with don't really operate the way she does in terms of this much amount of like understanding and flexibility and love and intuition. I mean, and I really think that's how capitalism should be. Like, if every business did business like this, not only would everybody make more money, or actually, I don't know about making more money, but like you would make the amount of money that you need. Like you would, it's not about the amount, but it's like everyone would actually just feel more abundant, and they would enjoy their business and their lives, and the employees would enjoy their time there as well. And like the world would actually be a better place. And you can still do your business and make products and sell stuff and do marketing and make money, but you would actually do it in a way that completely helps the planet rather than trying to enslave it to drive your profits up, which actually only fucks everything up again, you know, in the long term. Force only works short term. Love and power. Real power. That's God, man. That works for eternity. Like, if I didn't allow myself to go broke, I would have never gotten this job. And it's crazy. Okay, so can I tell you a little bit about my journey here? Well, I don't want to go into too much detail, but it's like at one point I came back to New Zealand. I was living with my mother, and then she kicked me out, due to various reasons that I don't want to get into right now. It's like too much to talk about. And then I was living in a car for a bit, and I was house sitting. Then I lived in these like apartment complex, and then another apartment complex, which is where am now. But the rent is actually really expensive. So like all the money that I made from acting in commercials, it was running out really quickly. But then a part of me was like, I really want to try this thing where I listen to my intuition and I listen to my heart. Like rather than immediately go into this panic mode of like, oh no, I'm running out of money, so let's panic, find some shitty job that I don't really align with just to make money to survive, right? It's like, let's just stay with your heart. Do what you really want to do. Like, do what you want to do that feels true, not just out of panic and fear, and see where it takes you, right? And I did do a lot of awesome things. It didn't feel that directed, and sometimes I felt very distracted and not really in alignment, but at least I wasn't forcing myself to do something that I hated, which is something I would have done in the past, right? So I wasn't doing the best, like, good thing, but at least I wasn't doing the worst bad thing, right? But eventually my money did run out, and I was like, I sort of applied for some jobs like half-assedly, sort of feeling like I'm not really gonna get them, but I'm like, I don't really know. So, but it didn't really go anywhere. And at a point, I did run out of money, so I had to ask my dad for money, and he gave some money to help me out. And I kind of felt like, look, I can always like try and force myself to get a job and make money, but like, I haven't really explored like going down that low, asking my dad for money, like, maybe disappointing him and feeling some sort of shame from that. I haven't done that because of this fear of shame and like being perceived as like a failure, right? And And then but beneath that, you have the government support as well that New Zealand has. It's like, again, it's like, oh, if I tell people, even now I feel sort of ashamed. Like I'm afraid to tell people, oh, I was on the benefit, the government benefit, in case they think, I'm some sort of like weird homeless loser or something, right? But I'm like, look, I can do all of these things to avoid being judged as a loser or a failure. Or I can just face the fact that it's okay to be a loser and a failure and to be this low, and to deal with these feelings of like shame and judgment from other people, right? Because it's like, are you just doing things to avoid judgment, or are you doing things because it genuinely feels right? Even if people judge you as something despicable, like if that feels right to you, be despicable. Like it's way more honorable to be like honestly despicable than to do things, like get a job because you're afraid of being judged as this or that. I think it takes much more courage to be an honest loser than a fake winner. So I'm like, okay, well then in that case, let's just ask my dad for money. And then when I asked my dad for money, like it felt kind of boring or empty. Like, I know I can do this, but this isn't really my path forward. But having said that, well, which is why I never asked him, I didn't ask him for money after he gave me the first amount, which is just for like a month's worth of rent and survival. But I did share a really nice moment with my dad when I asked him. I was like, hey dad, sorry, I kind of feel bad about this, but I promise you in the future I'll make it big and stuff like that. And he was like, I never doubted that. You and your brother are the things I love the most. So, if I can support you, I'll always do it. So I had that experience, and I was like, well, okay, cool. I did that. I did the losery thing of asking your dad for money, and I don't think keep asking him for money is the way to go. So let's try the second backup, which is government support. So I did it, and it was wonderful. Like the whole process, for some reason, the whole process of applying for it was just so smooth. Like I just devoured everything so quickly. It's like, like, like a Pac-Man, like, like do this, do that, do this, do that, do that, do that. Like there were a lot of paperwork and stuff, but it felt all very easy. Like it was just a clear tunnel to do everything. But anyways, like through the work and income, they paired me up with a job broker who was really cool. And then like, essentially like they look at your CV and they talk about who you are, what you do and stuff. Because they don't want to pair you up with someone or something to do that doesn't fit you, because that makes no sense, right? Of course. Yet everyone does that. he scrolled through the computer of all the jobs, and he found this like marketing coordinator job. And like nowadays, I try and do everything based on vibes, and for some reason, when I saw that job pop up, I just got such a good vibe from it. I'm like, oh yeah, that looks tasty. Like that looks yum and like beautiful and like full of quantum bubbly energy for some reason. And I actually think at that moment I knew I was going to get this job, because I'm like, that's for me, that feels right. But of course, we talked through it and stuff like that. And he was like, we normally don't get jobs like this advertised here. And I'm like, I bet, like who the fuck is looking for a marketing coordinator, in a draw pool of people on the work and income? But I don't know, it's like, if you have someone that's skilled enough to be a marketing coordinator of this caliber, would they really be on work and income? Like I'd imagine not, but here I am, right? There was one guy and that was me, and I bet I was the only one that was referred to her to this job. And and okay, and get this, the really funny thing was my current boss, she said, we only advertised through work and income, and only because I was on work and income that I was referred to this job, and that's how we found each other. And when she mentioned that out, I was like, yeah, it doesn't make sense, and I don't think you'd expect to find someone like me here. You didn't decide to put it through work and income to find someone like me. You did it to find me. Maybe I'm romanticizing this more than I should, and maybe it turns out to be nothing and was horrible, and I just have this little fantastical moment I share with you now where I talk about it in positivity. But I do feel like it was a very beautiful and fated encounter. And the story how we met was very... There was no other way. Like, if I didn't follow my intuition and succumb to my heart, really, and gone through these safety nets of my father and the government, I wouldn't have arrived at this point. And it really does feel like a sense of rock bottom, of coming here, like finally hitting rock bottom. Because before I would always do these ego things to prevent myself from hitting rock bottom. But the thing is, if you do ego things and make ego money, you can only spend it on ego things, and then it keeps you in this ego loop. And it's until you've spent all your ego money do you get back to this point of like, okay, do you keep finding a job and panicking because you're afraid of losing money, or do you just trust your intuition and do what feels right? And if what feels right is going broke, asking your dad for money, getting government support, then you actually need to do that in the service of God and your dharma. That's the path you actually need to walk. And I think I would have always gotten to this point, even if I'm glad I didn't get that rich and famous in the past, because I think it would be so much harder to get to this point again. But even if I got rich and famous, like, there would still be a point where I would lose everything, all my reputation, all my money, right? Get abandoned by my mother or whatever, just to get to this point of absolute zero, of going broke, of getting to the bottom. Because when you're at the bottom, that's when you truly surrender to God. Like, until you drop all ego, you will never actually choose God. And you realize when you do choose God, how supported you are. Because for a long time, I've had this feeling of like, I'm actually trying to go to hell, of going to the bottom, to the most bottom pit of hell. And until then, I won't be satisfied, because I wouldn't have excavated that degree of experience. I wouldn't have fully pushed the envelope to the utmost limit, to the edge. Like, I want to grow my tree to the highest echelons of heaven, like Yggdrasil. Therefore, my roots need to be in hell. And I think I was looking for that bottom. So I would have always ended up in this point. And I'm glad I did it now. And it feels, and actually now I have the genuine feeling of I've actually hit bottom, and finally I'm gonna make my way up now. You finally hit the foundational level, bedrock.